giving people opportunities to sit with us, to build trust with us, to learn from us, to understand us. And it is an ecosystem, and building in the low ticket has just added another piece of the ecosystem. But the private podcast is a major piece of the ecosystem.
Welcome to another episode of Launch Your Private Podcast. This is a follow-up episode, dare I say, repeat episode. Nicole Culver is here, everyone. And we had her episode last year was one of the top episodes. We'll definitely link it. We replayed it over winter break. People love hearing about a funnel that was generating $300,000 plus. I'm sure at the time of this message, it is even higher. So we should go in and edit that. But Nicole Culver's here, and she is going to share with us like where she's been since her episode aired and what she's been doing with private podcasts. I was just informing her that she's also creeping up to be one of our top affiliates here because she's teaching her community how to do private podcasting. That's how well that funnel has worked for her, that lead magnet as a conversion tool. I know she's using it as a conversion tool. So Nicole, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be back and talk about what we're doing in podcasts and whatever you want to talk about.
All the things. Well, we love it. Maybe let's quickly recap. I don't remember, what that episode, we can kind of give people the magic bullets. They can obviously go and listen, but we talked about that first funnel that you had launched that was a private podcast. It was a secret podcast, I think was the language you used. We talked a little bit about the choice of that and how that worked. So give us the rundown of that funnel and kind of what it's the impact on your business.
Yeah. So we launched it actually 2023. So it's just about 2 years now. We call it a secret podcast. It's basically just, your Hello Audio does such a beautiful job of secret private podcasts. And when I started to think of launching one, my entire hypothesis and my premise was if I could get people to kind of go through a bingeable series where I was teaching my entire framework on evergreen funnels and showing the behind the scenes, my hypothesis was if I could get them to sit with me and listen to my voice and listen to the way I was talking about things, how I was sharing my process and my frameworks, I would be able to build trust really, really quickly because I knew my regular podcast, The Shift Show, did well, but I also knew I've been podcasting. I even get this number. It's 9 years that I've been regular podcasting. Been doing it for so long. I have over, 500 maybe or 493, something like that episodes. So what happened was people were just asking me hey, where do I start? And I would give them this list. I'd be like, well, start here. And when Hello Audio started, which I don't know how close I was to when you all started, but I was I think I could do this in a bingeable series, which if you want a throwback, I've been doing this so long. I used to have a course that was teaching bingeable content. And this was around 2018. It was called the serial method, around just serial content to listen to. So I've been doing this for so long. So really I was waiting for that platform to come out, which was you all, Hello Audio. And it was the type of thing where it just went really well to start. And my husband was who works with me, he was super skeptical. And I don't need to be right about a lot of things, but this was one of those things that I really wanted to be right on, and I was. And it was this kind of slow burn where we had our audience asking for the private podcast. And Dan was in the first 30 days, I don't know if this is doing anything. And I was you do not turn those ads off. You do not. We wait. And 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, we started to hear all of our sales. Hey, where did you really learn this? People would come to our sales calls using our language, talking about things like the rich niche, tiny promise timeline, all of the words that we say. And it turned out when we looked back at the data, when we had enough people come through, every single person who bought from us listened to our secret podcast.
That's cool. That makes sales conversations so much easier. right? They amount, because you've been doing this for a hot minute. So the importance of pre-framing, the importance of spending time on those calls, and not that they're the most enjoyable for everyone. And I'm sure people listening are like, yeah, I wish I could maybe spend less time or have those go better or convert more people off of them or just feel like they're doing a better job. And it sounds like the private podcast helped with that. So already people coming to the call with a common language, speaking, using terms that you've created awareness around. So education and awareness. Sounds like you were also able to establish your personality and so they kind of knew what to expect. So you had either whether it was shared values or just your style of how you showed up or how you taught or how you were a thought leader. So it sounds like that really helped on the conversion side as well.
I mean, 1,000,000%. The podcast was creating demand for the program. And when you have someone coming to a call, like you just said, using your words and using your language, we're really big on creating our own. Basically, inside Elevate, we have our entire own language that we use, but our processes and our frameworks and doing things differently. Because I've been in the online space since before 2011 when I quit my teaching job. So I've been doing this so long. And when people show up to calls using the words, using the phrases that you say, you're like, okay, I'm 100% doing this right. And it almost just makes the sales calls and the rest of, and we've actually completely redone the private podcast since we spoke. So we could talk about why we did that, how we did that, what we did with that. But it just makes it less of a lift because they're coming in with the demand for your solution.
Yeah. I've been seeing a lot of, I guess it's a little bit this last quarter, people talking about podcasting as a sales tool, general podcasting, right? Having a public podcast. And I don't think that that's wrong. There is something super magical about audio, but when you make it succinct, an asset, right? That stands alone from the podcast, especially someone who has 500 plus episodes, it's kind of like, do they even go back and listen to your first ones? Which ones are they listening to? You know what I mean? And sometimes people have interview podcasts and the guest really looks like the expert, not really. And I know that's kind of things that people talk about when they talk about podcasts for conversion. But I just like to point out that we know podcasting works. We know the audio piece works. What makes private podcasting special is it's an orchestrated, right? It's a journey you're taking someone through that also includes the audio piece, also includes that you get to hear their personality, you get immersed in their world. And that's so much better than hoping and praying they binge a couple episodes, right? And that then they feel like, who knows what you're talking about that week, right? Most of the time people are trying to talk about things that would make them want to do the next step. But this is it's a structured piece of content. So I would love to hear about the changes that you made.
Yeah. I mean, the past few years have been super interesting in online business, and there have been so many changes. And I'm one of the people who I always want to talk about those changes because I see so many people just only talk about, oh, everything's working great. And I created this system and process in 2018 and I'm still using it and it's working. And
those are the people whose launches are doing well right now. They have to be, because come on.
And what we say is we are boots on the ground people. We have been, I don't have the largest audience. I don't have the biggest name recognition, but what I do have is client results, hands down. And that's because we are boots on the ground. We're continually changing and adapting. And, we've been running Elevate in this current way, even though we've made changes, iteration, I'll say, since 2021. We have been doing this a long time. And with our systems and processes, we're always tweaking and making changes based on, our people are moms. They have summer break. They send their kids back to school. They have their kids home. February is the month of sickness for everyone. So we're always changing, tweaking, making these minor changes and tweaks. And what I see a lot of people do is yes, I'm still running the same system since 2017. That has not been my truth. That has not been, let me set up this one funnel and let it run for eons of time. We're always making tweaks and changes based on what's working in the market, what our people are going through, what they're experiencing, and we're updating that inside our programs. So what happened was basically, like I said, we've been running high ticket, our program Elevate, which is a one-to-one service plus a mastermind since 2021. Around the end of 2022, I started to like get this feeling, and obviously everything is data backed, that there was this shift where we were having people come in very quickly, but there was almost like this lapse where people were a little bit more hesitant to jump into the high ticket. So we started playing around with low ticket offers, which my husband and I were pretty against, because we thought, our mindset behind it was, we know our clients get results when they work with us one-to-one and inside our program Elevate. And we want people who are going to get the results, who are going to go the mile. But as we got into the end of 2023, we started to be like, there are these people who we know they're their rich niche, but there's this hesitancy out there. So we started to just play with some low ticket things. And what we found was, we always are tracking our buyer data. So what we found was, we used to have this piece where, okay, every single person listens to the Evergreen Experience, which was our secret podcast. But once we started creating these low tickets, we started to see, oh my gosh, every person who bought Elevate also bought this $27 cash conversations offer. And it started to be this other metric of, then they're going from 27 to paying us, a 5-figure price point. So then we started to just test out different things with that. And once we really went all in on that 2024 and just started testing some low tickets to see if that would get people to then jump into Elevate. And we found that it did. So then what happened was, we had this private podcast where we were teaching how to get high ticket sales from a secret podcast, but we're missing the element that we had brought into our business of low ticket. And it was good. Like, the content was great, but I felt like, oh, well, I've updated all of this in my business, and now I'm leaving out this giant piece, sharing this with people. So everything is living and breathing. And I was like, I got to re-record everything. So we did. So I re-recorded everything and basically just shared, like, okay, yes, our secret podcast now has become like a piece of the puzzle. It's not the whole thing, but every person still is listening to the secret podcast. But now also what we're seeing is they're buying something before they're willing to jump in to Elevate.
Yeah, I love that. That's such an interesting, and I think what I want to point out to people listening is, like, starting with one thing, doing it for a couple years, paying attention, listening. I mean, having someone who goes into the data and is like, I know this many people listen and this many people are listening and they end up in my thing, and then tweaking it a little bit down the line. So this is 2 years in, making a tweak that then is also helping your people. And we love that too. That's kind of how we've always been with Hello Audio. We're like, we're learning private podcasting alongside with you guys. Like, we're experimenting, we're learning from our users, testing out things, reporting back. We're always talking about decisions that we make, like why we made the podcast public, which one's public, which one's not, those kind of things. And so those are the type of business owners I love, that are open, honest about what's working in their business. It never feels like they're hiding something or they don't want you to know something. And I think that's like the era that we're in, is that transparency, that honesty, and that always attracts people too, right? So if you update a feed, you can mention the history and like where it's been, and that is going to make people trust you even more, I think, because we're showing what's working, and like that probably leads to conversions too, right? Where it's just like, oh, this must be what the mastermind's like. She's bringing what she's testing, right? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah. And of course, our clients get it more in real time, because with my clients, I can say, hey, this is what we're doing. We'll let you know how this is going, or this is how much data we have. But obviously, when it comes to something like the private podcast, which I'm not going to be talking to my private podcast audience every single week, I need to give it a little bit more time to see how it was working.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it feels aligned too with, I think, what we've seen in the industry I think, we've had a lot of, over the last couple of years, I think a lot of business owners have had a more difficult time selling high ticket. And it's not because the value isn't there. It's just because of all the things that have happened in the industry and because people maybe are more hesitant because changes in the economy, there's more uncertainty, there's more value fatigue. It's just, and I think that speaks volumes to the benefit of having a private podcast on the front end because you're able to establish that connection in an environment where it is difficult to establish a connection, I think, with people as, they opt in for resources or, they're searching for something and they getting value plus that connection, I think makes a big difference. And then you start to establish that relationship, and that low ticket product is just another demonstration of your ability to help them with that. So it feels very congruent, I think, with what we've all seen in the industry. And it sounds like it's super beneficial for ultimately getting them where they need to be to see the biggest results, which is that, that next step, that Elevate program.
Yeah. And think about it too. The thing I love about the podcast is that it just integrates with what you're already doing. When you have a freebie, when you have a video on a landing page, which, we have that, but who on their phone does not already have a podcast player that they're using at least once a week? Every single person does.
Like so when 80% of people that listen to podcasts listen to it weekly.
Right. So when I'm integrating into a platform that they already are having and using, and they don't have to go log in to my course platform, you're making it easy. And that's the thing is like, I want to meet my people where they are. I don't want to make it a lot of extra work for them to listen to the podcast. So Hello Audio just makes it so easy that you're just integrating with what they are already using and you're going to them as opposed to making it difficult. And it sounds silly at this point that like logging into somewhere is difficult, but I'm the type of person.
No, it's not, we talk about that probably every episode. Does not sound silly over here.
Oh, okay. Because I don't know any of my passwords. No. I'm the person who's like asking their husband, like, hey, do you know my login to this? So it just makes life easier.
Nora literally just slacked me. We need to get because her and I buy different things. We're like, what courses do we own? What things? And we're like, literally, I'm sure every business owner, it's like, you buy some $27 products, you buy a couple $100 products, and we bought it. And then it's like, okay, let's go do it. And if it was in one of our podcast apps, which we have someone, that's exactly what she had. She's a big private podcast proponent. And it's that actually got listened to. Right, Nora?
Yeah.
Yep. Yes, 1,000,000%. I just said to my husband the other day, I was like, oh, I bought that thing. I should go log in. Versus if it's on my podcast player,
you know exactly where to find it.
Exactly. I don't need to work so hard.
Yeah. And I use a password management. Like we have LastPass.
Mm-hmm. Oh, me too.
It doesn't even matter. I still don't want to log in. Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
It's because I was saying to Nora, like, I don't even know the names of people I buy stuff from typically. Like, so I don't even know what to search in my inbox. It's bad. It's bad.
I know. It's bad.
And
that's like how you get them too. Right. Not you get them, but like with the lower ticket things, it just it's so easy.
Get them excited. Yeah.
Under $50, that's like a coffee, basically.
Which is sad, but
I know.
Another conversation.
I know. It's a whole. We won't talk about that.
I just transitioned from drinking venti to like talls, and I was like, "That's the price difference." I thought it was going to be like $4. Oh no, it's still like $6. I was just like, "What the hell is that?" Oh my gosh. Anyways, I wanted to talk about now that you've been on too. So I love hearing that you've made some adjustments, and it's working for your business. It's working for your people. I'd love to hear about what's happening you're probably one of the first people we've had that teaches private podcasting. So I'd love to hear how that is going with your students and what's happening with that as you educate other people on using private podcasts.
Yeah, I created that because I had so many questions because our secret podcast, it's been around for a long time. And people say to me, literally every single week, I get your ads for this. I see you everywhere. How are you doing this? You hope it's working. Otherwise, we're just spending a lot of money.
Well, there's that too, for sure.
But no, it's working. It's working. So I put it out there and we created the Secret Podcast Starter Pack, which is how to create your own secret podcast. And I think one of the best things, again, is that my people are just the experts of all experts. And they're like me, where they just have so much everywhere. They have so much Instagram content, so much YouTube even content. They have so much course content. And how do you put it together and make it succinct? How do you put it into something that makes it bingeable? And again, all the things we talked about, but it's just such benefit to the people who are creating secret podcasts that it's like sitting down, having a cup of coffee with someone and being able to show them, hey, this is why I'm reputable. This is why I'm an authority. This is how I teach. These are my frameworks. And how I teach it, and we can go into this if you want, but how I teach to set up your secret podcast is to basically think of it as like a sideways webinar. So if you have all of the pieces of your webinar, your every episode is going to hit one of the pieces of the webinar without it being this perfectly scripted thing that you're reading. How I teach it is like, okay, you have your intro, you have your story, you have your frameworks and processes, your objections, why they should join, but you're weaving the pitch into every single episode seamlessly because it is legitimate. If I'm saying to someone, hey, you need to attract your rich niche because these are the people who already want your help. If you want to learn exactly how to do this, then go buy the rich niche. It's $47. I don't need to give. I think that's the other great thing about the secret podcast is I don't need to be perfect. I don't need to be perfectly scripted. I want to have a conversation with you in each episode. So I'm going to bullet out the points I want to make sure I teach, but then I'm just going to talk to you.
That's so good. Nora and I have talked about this before too. Webinar is such a loaded term, especially for people who've been around for a long time. It's just like, we've seen some shit, right? And we felt uncomfortable. And, a lot of the reason why people even hesitate ever launching a webinar is they felt terrible on a webinar. So then they internalize that and they don't want to do that to their people. And so it's this vicious cycle. And it's not that they don't work. And people are talking about that. They totally do work. And some people are seeing pretty high show up rates right now. And I do think that's interesting. But there is something to be said for a confident, authority showing up in the way that they feel comfortable without all the extra stuff, getting to that execution. When you tell somebody, if you were coaching somebody, you're like, okay, go create a webinar to sell that course. It's just shit. I just created the course. Now I have to do this crazy thing. And then wait, go grab a cup of coffee. It doesn't matter. Don't do your hair, do some bullet points and talk. And that feels 1,000 times better. And that, I believe wholeheartedly, that always translates to more sales, more connection with the people who are ready for you because you're you without some of the stuff that the webinar creates or demands of us. And it's that visual aspect of the slides. There's so many, the tech stuff, just to even have the things working and show up at the right time or whatever, it's a lot. And I'm not saying that webinars don't work. I think for something like this that it can have equal show up or actually higher download rates, right, than a webinar. That's huge and so much easier. And that kind of lift can really take that person to momentum to get them going. And that's everything.
Yeah, 100%.
I think context matters. I think, where you're reaching people, like you had mentioned earlier, Nicole, you're reaching people where they're at. And that's so important, not just in the device, because I think that where we're at is likely where we're going to consume content, but also I think the environment where the contextual environment where we consume content really matters in the sense that, I'm sure the three of us have been on webinars where we log in, we're maybe a little on edge, we're already a little defensive, or we're just expecting maybe that gross feeling or maybe not even sure what to expect, or just, the first 15 minutes of small talk, we're can we just get to the point of why I actually came to this thing?
Yes.
Right? I mean, we've all experienced it. And then I think compare that where you're sitting at a desk and, you're sitting at a screen versus a very intimate or a more intimate experience with I'm listening to your voice in my ears as I'm going in, throughout my day, and whether I'm in the car by myself driving to pick up a kid, or I'm walking the dogs, or I'm maybe cooking dinner. That's a very different contextualized experience that I have, and I'm going to receive that information in a very different way. And again, to your point, it's not that webinars don't work, but I think it's, for years, I mean, as a lot of people that were teaching marketing didn't talk about thinking about the person that was actually receiving the right. It was always like, say this, don't do this, like, all that stuff. But I think this flips the script a bit because it allows you to reach that person in a way that just makes them a lot more receptive to the goal that you have to say. And I think that's really important for the connection. And then also, obviously, the ultimate conversion, which is what we want.
Yeah, 100%. And I think for me, like you said, I'm always thinking about the person who's listening, and I want to craft it for them. So we do live trainings almost every single week, and we don't call them webinars, but we do live trainings, but they're different every single week because I want to know who's actually on the other side of the computer. I don't prepare this thing because what if the 5 people, 10, 20 people come? I want to know about you. I want to know what you're saying. I want to know where you're coming from. I want to know what you're struggling with. And I realize not every business owner wants to do that or can do that, but I can, and we can, my husband and I who do the trainings. And that's how we set ourselves apart. And then we bring that to our podcasting. We have client only private podcasts too, where then I can say, hey, submit questions to me and I'm going to answer them, and just you get to listen to them. But it really is like everything we do comes back to the person sitting in front or who's going to be listening as opposed to scripted. And I think that's important, especially for right now.
You're bringing up a good point about how it all works together too. And like you brought up something like, yeah, I still host trainings and you put that in the podcast, right? And so this idea of repurposing or like, making sure that there's different types of learners, if you want to call it that, but like different like access points, I guess. And then you're not wasting your time where it's like you spent all this time on a training and it's like get that information to your one-on-one clients, to your, people in Elevate, to all the places. And that's what's cool about private podcasting is that makes it so much easier. I think a lot of times it's like, oh, I can throw the video up in the portal, but then you just know in your heart of hearts, no one's going to watch it. And so it's like you have this tool that like actually gets it where they're at and they can listen to it if they weren't able to come or whatever. And I think that's huge too.
Yeah, everything we do is an ecosystem. It's very interesting because sometimes I feel like it's hard to explain. I love our evergreen systems. I love waking up to sales. I think it's so fun to do that. But I am working. I am like showing up live. I am doing live trainings. It's an ecosystem. So we don't have and we don't want the type of business that's like, I'm actually not going to work. I'm actually not going to do anything. That's not my goal. I love, we went to Aruba for 5 days and I didn't even get the internet, which was a whole amazing experience. I don't know if the last time I didn't open Instagram for 5 days. I highly recommend it to anyone. But we came back and then you work again. Like that's my goal as the CEO and someone who is a coach and mentor for clients. I want to work. So we have our secret podcast. It brings in leads automated every single day. Some people buy right from that, and some people will come to a live training. Some people will buy a low ticket thing. Some people will buy Elevate, but we're giving people opportunities to sit with us, to build trust with us, to learn from us, to understand us. And it is an ecosystem. And that's such a great point because I think that's what we have always done. But I think the building in the low ticket has just added another piece of the ecosystem. But the private podcast is a major piece of the ecosystem.
Yeah. And I love that you've run ads too.
Yeah, totally.
I think that's a big deal. And I know when we first did an episode, we talked a lot about that because I think not many people were running ads to private podcasts at that time. And because we always get that question, does it actually work? Can you actually? Yes, it does. You can actually run ads to a private podcast. We're actually just running ads to a new asset, like a new lead magnet that we created too at Hello Audio. And I love that you've experimented with your ads as well. I think that speaks volumes to just your attention to detail and the fact that you care about reaching people. And I think as you've learned some things, I guess, if you wouldn't mind sharing maybe some of the tips you might have for some folks that have thought about running ads, or maybe are nervous, or are just maybe wondering still if they actually work. If you wouldn't mind sharing maybe your experience over the last.
Yeah. And I don't know if you teach that in your system either, or like your course, or if that's something that it's more like an organic thing or.
Yeah. So, first of all, I'm obsessed with ads, like just hands down. And now, fortunately or unfortunately, you're going to get our ads because
I was just
you're
going to say,
listening.
you even have to Google just the fact that they're listening and it says Nicole Culver.
I think probably, I think probably you'll get my ads right now. But here's the thing, how I've always thought about ads. I started my business in 2011. I had my first baby in 2012, and I have 3 kids now. It was always like, I never wanted, and I still don't really want to travel a lot away from my kids. My oldest is 12 now. My youngest is 7 today. I don't want to be away from them that much. I'm like one of those annoying parents. Like, I don't like leaving them.
We get it.
So I've invested in ads because it's time or money. And yes, I give time. Like, obviously I'm here with you all, but I have my own work boundaries and I'm not willing to travel all over the place. I'm not willing to take that much time. So when I had my first, I was like, you know what? I don't have that much time because I was with her full time also. So I'm going to invest in ads. And we started really, really, really small with ads. And obviously now we spend tens of thousands of dollars a month on ads every single month. And they work, but we didn't make this massive, it wasn't like, I'm going to spend $5 a day and then I'm going to spend $5,000 a day. There was, points. And even when we go away on vacation, we'll turn down our ads a little bit just because we're not working as much. I would say if ads are a tool and they're an amazing tool. And if you're like me, where you don't have as much time or you don't want to give as much time, then I would experiment with ads. I also think learning how to run ads yourself is one of the most underutilized thing. A lot of people are very quick to spend thousands of dollars a month on some ad manager when it can be very easily learned and you can do it in 30 to 60 minutes when you're starting even like a week. It's not that hard. So that's the first thing is, yes, they 100% work. If you cannot do more with your time, then use money and do it in a really smart way that you're getting your money back and more from your ads. And then the next piece of it is our organic and our ads are working in conjunction. If you go to my Instagram profile, you will see that the Secret Podcast is everywhere. It's pinned in my profile. It's in my highlights. It's in my links. So people are organically signing up for the Secret Podcast every single day. I also will do a post about it. I try to do about once a week, depending on what we have going on for promotions. So it's working in conjunction with the ads, but they 100% work. The other thing I'll say is the more niche your podcast is around a certain topic, the better the ads are going to work. So for example, if you're doing a secret podcast and it's all about health, that's not going to work very well. It's way too broad. It's 2025. You can't do a podcast just about health. It's not going to work. But if you're doing a podcast around like how to fix your child's rash in the next 7 days, I don't know why I just said rash, but we're just gonna, mom issues.
Mom podcast. There you go.
Mom podcasting. Yes. Or I know like perimenopause and like losing belly fat in perimenopause. That's like what my entire feed is. I just turned 40. So weird. That's everything. So if you want to do a private podcast on how to lose belly fat for women over 40, that's going to crush. So you have to really think about how can you be super specific, or like how to get your child to sleep through the night if they're 12 months old. Like that level of specificity where someone's going to go, hey, that's my problem, and you're talking specifically for me, that's going to work really well for a podcast. Ours is the behind the scenes of how to grow a 6-figure a month evergreen funnel. It's really specific. So the more specific you can get, the better your ads are going to work, but always start with your current audience and see if they're interested in it first. Love that.
Yeah. Nora's like, yep.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And the cool part about that too is that because there are a lot of resources out there for ads management, and I mean, let's face it, Meta doesn't make it super easy because things change and whatever. And I still think it's manageable, like you said, especially when you're starting out. You don't need to have things be overly complicated. You don't need 10 different ad sets. You don't need, it's just, you can keep it simple. You can keep your eye on the data and you can just start with a very small budget to test. And I do think, like exactly with what you said, keep it specific. I think investing time and effort in the messaging and in the conversation starter before you get to the point where you're putting, money behind it. Take some time with that piece of it, because that to me is always time well spent, is when you're really thinking through how we're starting conversations with people. And I do think there's plenty of resources out there. You don't necessarily, and you shouldn't need to start with an ads agency that costs tens of thousands of dollars. That's just not where you need to be. And when you get to the point where you're spending tens of thousands of dollars on ads, and if you want to outsource it, great, but that's not where you need to start. And you can start very simply with a private podcast with an ad running to it, and you can still expand your reach that way, which I think a lot of people I know in our community have absolutely brought up as, how do I grow my audience? This is one easy way where you can keep it simple and actually grow that list.
Yes, 1,000,000%. And that's why we started learning ads, because I don't know what year, like literally when you could start running Facebook ads, that's when we started running Facebook ads, and we started looking into having someone do it for us. And at the time it was like $400 or something. Like it was not, what wouldn't be a lot of money to us now was a lot of money to us then. And we started being like, we're going to pay someone $400. No, we're just going to learn this. And we did. And it was not as difficult as you think when you just start simple.
Yes, that's the key, starting simple. And I think, I don't know, I know Lindsay and I are biased because we do think private podcasts are simple, especially compared to some of the other stuff that both of us have done in our respective, previous businesses and lead magnets and trainings and webinars. Like that stuff didn't always feel as simple as a private podcast does. Now, I don't know how you felt when you were thinking about redoing some of the content to include that low ticket, but my guess is that it probably didn't feel as painful as it could have been if it was in a different format.
Oh, 100%. And I'll tell you, like most of my private podcast episodes, I have a very simple mic I attach to my phone, and I just record it on my voice memos.
Perfect.
That's it. And sometimes my private podcast, that's like our client podcast, I'll walk and talk and I say like, this is real. I'm going through this in the moment. So you're going to hear, I'll be like, oh, landscaper, got to turn around. So you don't hear that. It's very real and raw, but it's also incredibly simple. My husband and I will sit on the couch and just grab the mics and just start recording. No video, just voice record on my phone, put it on Do Not Disturb. And it's just easy. And I can just drag and drop into the feed.
Oh, the Do Not Disturb tip. That's a good one.
Oh,
or airplane mode, either or, but yes.
You must do not disturb because you will, not that I've ever had that happen where you mess the entire thing up.
Yeah.
But if you didn't, then you would. I feel like that's my luck, is like if I forget to flip the switch or forget it, and then I'm like, oh, no,
I've had entire episodes ruined because I don't put on Do Not Disturb. So I mostly remember now.
Awesome. This has been a really big episode. I think we've heard about an update to a private podcast feed that is still crushing, still running ads. You guys might want to just Google her and you'll just see everything. We'll also have all the links in the show notes, of course. But I'm curious if you have any, private podcasts that you haven't launched yet or you're thinking of launching, or some secret idea that you have that
a new secret. So yes, I actually we're going to release a second podcast that's just on leads, like creating demand for your offers and how to attract the right leads. So I would say I'm like 65 to 70% done on that one. I don't know when I'm going to release it yet because, like I said, we had a very interesting February. So normally it would be done, but it's
a little
taking me
bit more of a setback
longer.
this month than you
Yes.
expected. That's okay.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, but we wanted to create something just around like the lead system that we've created with our evergreen systems. So we're really diving into how to create demand for what you do and how to attract and get the right leads every single day. So they're coming in and actually wanting to buy from you, because there's nothing worse than like creating an audience of people who actually has no intention of solving their problems. And that's what happens with a lot of people's freebies and webinars and launches. So what we have mastered in the past 13, 14 years is how to create an audience that, again, I don't have the largest audience in the world. My Instagram is like, just over 10,000, 14,000, something like that. But my audience wants to hear from us. They want to buy from us. They repeatedly buy over and over again. So we're sharing in this podcast how to create a lead system to do that.
I love that.
Quality over quantity makes a
Yes.
big difference. And
All day,
the
every
list
day.
the size is not the most important thing, but the fact that you can actually attract buyers. Yeah. I think if you've been on the flip side of that and you've experienced having and paying for lots of emails in whatever email system you're using, and you look in that non-buyer list when you're running your list launches or when you're, looking at promotions, that is a very painful thing to experience. So avoiding it, yes. When it's ready, we'll update the link to the show notes and make sure that.
Yeah, I'll
I'm
let
sure
you know.
we'll get the ads too. So
Yes.
Absolutely.
awesome. Well, thanks for hanging out with us and sharing behind the scenes of what's going on over there.
Thank you so much for having me back. It was so fun.
Yeah, I'm excited for you to be the #1 affiliate sometime. I think it's going to happen. We'll see. I don't know. I actually forgot to check. Your numbers are really good. I was explaining to Nora, I think you're like in the top 5, but what your numbers are interesting is you have less clicks that are like conversions and people that stay as customers. Some of these people have been promoting us for a really long time. So of course they have a bunch of clicks that maybe don't end up as customers or people that have left. But like your conversion rate is pretty high, which I'm not surprised.
Talking about quality over quantity, a lot of those people are coming in because they've bought my secret podcast starter pack. So they're already coming in primed for you all.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. Well, let us know if you need anything from us. We're happy to help. I was already asking Katie, I was like, if you have any roadmap things, ideas, things you wish Hello Audio did, we are all ears. So Nicole, we will be, we're sending out a product survey, actually, probably by the time this airs, we're sending out a product survey. And she's like, I will answer it. Don't worry. And I was like, okay, cool.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Of course. Take care.
You too.
And there you have it, audio heads. Another episode of Launch Your Private Podcast is in the books. I hope you're leaving today feeling even more ready to amplify your voice and connect with your audience in meaningful ways. The adventure continues in our next episode with even more insights, strategies, and inspiration to help you along your own private podcasting journey. Of course, make sure to check out helloaudio.fm to start your own private podcast. And remember, you've got amazing content that needs to be heard. So let's turn the volume up. Until next time.